The Atlantic Ocean hides secrets that not even time can erase. In 1985, 7 kilometers deep, a man who had spent his life sailing between science and secrecy dived where no one had ever dared. Robert Ballard, oceanographer, explorer, someone who turned technology into human eyes in the abyss, touched with his vision what the world had only known through legends: the Titanic. The impossible, the ship considered unsinkable, now revealed its silent truth. But what Ballard found was not only the end of a tragedy. It was a story of arrogance, negligence, and human choices that cost more than 1,500 lives. The descent began as a dive in absolute silence. There was no light, no sound, only the crushing pressure of the Atlantic pressing against every inch of the capsule carrying the robotic explorers. Every meter traveled was a barrier overcome, every shadow on the bottom a promise of revelation. When the first shape appeared from the darkness, Ballard's heart needed no confirmation. The Titanic was there, broken, silent, a frozen witness to a human disaster. It was not just a relic, it was a confessional of steel. Since youth, Ballard had a connection with the sea that went beyond the ordinary. Born in 1942, he served in the U.S. Navy during the Cold War, training in sonar and submarine navigation. But while his peers sought command and glory, he pursued invisible mysteries. He wanted to see what no one saw, touch what no one could touch, understand what remained hidden. His obsession, before Titanic, had already turned to the technology that would allow it: the ROVs, robotic cameras able to survive where the human body could not. Many doubted, but Ballard knew machines would be the eyes of the future. And the Titanic would be his great test. When the expedition finally revealed the bow, emerging like a ghost from the abyss, the world celebrated the feat as the discovery of a monument to tragedy and human bravery. But Ballard saw more. Among twisted steel, hanging chains, and broken structures, he saw signs of human failure. Rivets that came loose, steel plates that bent, structures broken even before the impact with the iceberg. The legend of the Great Collision was only a layer over the truth. The Titanic had been doomed before it touched the ice. Aboard his team, each image captured was a fragment of a deeper narrative. Shoes, suitcases, personal belongings, remnants of interrupted lives, scattered like echoes of an unfair destiny. Ballard did not see only failed engineering. He saw human stories devastated by corporate arrogance. The Titanic, so celebrated as a symbol of progress, was also a silent monument to negligence. What the world knew as a story of chance was, in fact, the result of choices made in boardrooms and not in the icy waters of the Atlantic. The first analysis of the wreck made it clear: the ship did not slide into the depths as survivor accounts suggested. It broke apart, spreading debris over nearly 2,000 meters. Every fold of steel, every crack opened by pressure, every burst rivet told a story of miscalculated economy and pride. Later metallurgical studies confirmed what Ballard's eye already knew: the steel was fragile, the rivets weaker than required. The catastrophe was not only natural, it was built. And Ballard carried that secret as a silent weight. But there was more than engineering failure. Deliberate, small, cruel decisions made the tragedy even greater. Only 20 lifeboats for more than 2,200 people on board. Iceberg warnings ignored for comfort and appearance. Luxury and aesthetics outweighed safety, and the price was paid with lives. Ballard saw all this through the lenses of his robots, every detail recorded, every piece of evidence preserved in the ocean's silence. And then came an even more disturbing layer: what was never shown to the public. Some objects never photographed, fragments possibly recovered and quietly delivered to authorities. Nothing proven, only murmurs. But the feeling that the Titanic hid more than it showed, that part of the truth was buried not only underwater but under secrets, weighed on Ballard's conscience. He knew what he captured was enough to question not only what history had told us, but the very trust in how official reports shape public perception. While the media celebrated poetic images of the bow, ghosts, and legends of heroism, what Ballard revealed was harsher: human negligence and arrogance, traces of greed that turned the Titanic into a trap for everyone aboard. He returned to the surface with photos, films, and data, but the popular narrative remained intact. History turned into myth, myth turned into prophet. Museums, films, exhibitions, all focused on the romanticism of tragedy, not on the silent crime the steel narrated. And it is in that silence between what was seen and what was told that the story of the Titanic reaches its deepest complexity. Among wreckage and forgotten objects, among rumors of documents never released, arises an inevitable question: how much truth still remains submerged, waiting for eyes unafraid to read it? Ballard, with his life entirely devoted to the ocean, left clues, evidence, a silent confession. But most of the world still looks only at the myth. And it is at that point that the story of the Titanic becomes more than a shipwreck. It is not only about ice, steel, or negligence. It is about what humanity chooses to see, about the truths that remain hidden and the legacies we refuse to face. The Titanic is not merely a tragedy of 1912. It is a mirror of what greed and pride can create when vigilance fails, when warnings are ignored, and when narratives are shaped for comfort and profit. And while the bow leans silently at the bottom of the Atlantic, the promise of discovery is still unfinished. What Ballard found, photographed, and documented is only the first layer of a secret that keeps unfolding, waiting for those who have the courage to face what lies in the silence of the deep sea. The ocean keeps everything. And in the Titanic, it kept more than any myth could ever tell. Even decades later, the silence of the Atlantic floor kept speaking. Robert Ballard brought to the surface images and data that forever changed how we understand the Titanic, but much of what he found remained away from the public eye. Some objects were never photographed. Fragments of steel, documents, and personal belongings may have been collected and quietly handed to authorities. No one confirms it, but whispers persist. Every ignored detail, every silenced piece of evidence, reinforces the feeling that there is more beneath the surface than the official story admits. What Ballard documented in 1985 was already disturbing enough. The popular narrative exalted courage, inevitable tragedy, and the ship's elegance. But reality showed something very different: structural flaws, cost cuts, luxury decisions over safety, and a succession of human errors that turned what could have been a contained tragedy into an avoidable massacre. The Titanic had not only met an iceberg. It had been doomed since construction, and every detail submerged in the Atlantic confirmed it. The first revelation was not only in the wreckage, but in the human objects scattered across the seafloor. Shoes aligned, clothes clinging to fragments of luggage, small marks of interrupted lives. Each piece was silent proof of stolen stories. Ballard did not see only metal and fittings, he saw the human dimension of negligence. The combination of faulty engineering and reckless corporate choices had turned luxury into a trap, and lives into silent witnesses. As the media celebrated the majesty of the Titanic and the fatal romance of the story, the technical evidence was pushed aside. Later metallurgical studies confirmed what Ballard's eyes already saw: brittle steel, rivets weaker than required, and joints unable to withstand pressure. The iceberg was not the villain. Greed, pride, and shortcuts in engineering were. Yet the popular narrative ignored these findings. The Titanic remained a myth of heroism and inevitable tragedy, not a lesson in systematic negligence. And then come the questions that were never answered. Why did certain pieces of evidence never reach the public? What documents, fragments, or records might have been removed before the expedition was disclosed? Ballard carried these answers in silence, honoring the memory of the dead, yet aware that the official story preferred comfort over confrontation. Between speculation and fact, an uneasy truth prevails. The Titanic was not only a victim of nature but a victim of human choices. As the years went by, Ballard reflected on the impact of his work. He saw the Titanic as a memorial, but also as a warning. A reminder of what happens when greed and pride outweigh safety and responsibility. Every photo, every study, every analysis of the wreck reinforced that lesson. And still, the story the world chose to tell remained centered on heroes and ghosts, not on preventable mistakes and fatal decisions. The technical failures were accompanied by deliberate choices that amplified the tragedy. Only 20 lifeboats for thousands of passengers. Iceberg warnings ignored or delayed for the sake of comfort and aesthetics. Every detail was a piece of a cruel puzzle, engraved not in newspaper memory but in the twisted steel on the ocean floor. The Titanic was less a story of accident and more a testimony of corporate arrogance and disregard for life. And then comes the realm of speculation. Some believe parts of the wreck may have been removed before the press gained full access. That sensitive materials, strategic cargo, or critical documents were collected and vanished into secret archives. Ballard never confirmed anything, but the possibility of undisclosed secrets adds a disturbing layer to the narrative. After all, if such crucial evidence could be hidden, how much more could the official story be shaped for comfort and not for truth? The Titanic, in the silence of its grave, did not tell only a story of steel and iceberg. It told of the society that allowed luxury decisions to outweigh safety, that placed prestige above life, and that bent truth for comfort and profit. Every artifact, every wreck, Every detail of the ruins reinforced that silent narrative. The bow still tilted, the stern destroyed, the decks empty forever, all were testimony to the human catastrophe embedded in steel. Ballard gave the world more than images, he gave a warning. A silent testimony of what happens when arrogance drives decisions, and when warnings are ignored. The tragedy of the Titanic is not limited to 1912, it echoes in every situation where pride and greed surpass responsibility. The silence of the ocean preserves these truths more precisely than any legend. And as we look at the wreckage, an inevitable unease arises. What else remains hidden, waiting for courageous eyes? What fragments of truth still lie at the bottom, not only of the water but of the official narrative? Ballard, now in his later years, carries this silent confession. He showed what can be seen, revealed what could be documented, but left open questions that continue to hover over the history of the Titanic. The discovery is not only scientific, it is moral. Every decision recorded in the wreck, every flaw exposed, every human object preserved challenges the narrative we choose to embrace. Between legend and truth, between myth and evidence, the Titanic remains a mirror of what humanity can do when luxury and appearance outweigh responsibility and life. And still, the silence is heavy. What Ballard brought to the surface is only the first layer of secrets. The depth of the Atlantic holds more than wreckage, it holds questions that may never be answered. Yet it is in this space between evidence and mystery that the Titanic continues to exert its power over imagination, reminding us that not everything celebrated as history is truth, and that some confessions can only be read between the twisted steel and the objects left behind. The ocean speaks, but who is willing to listen? In the icy silence of the Atlantic, the truth of the Titanic finally reveals itself. Every fold of steel, every burst rivet, every scattered wreck is not merely a sign of collision, it is proof of human choices. The ship did not surrender to the iceberg passively. It was betrayed from its conception, economy over safety, luxury above life, pride over prudence. What the world saw as inevitable tragedy was, in reality, a disaster designed by the combination of arrogance and negligence. Ballard, standing before that abyss, witnessed more than wreckage. He saw lives interrupted, stories frozen in time and space. Shoes side by side, personal objects scattered. Everything spoke of lives lost but also of mistakes that could have been avoided. Each image he brought to the surface was a silent confession of the ocean, an accusation engraved in steel and iron. The Titanic was not only a monument to tragedy, it was a mirror of societies that ignore warnings and choose appearance instead of safety. And then come the secrets that were never fully revealed. Fragments of documents, possibly collected artifacts, stories that remain as submerged as the ship itself. Ballard never confirmed everything, but the suspicion that the story we know is only part of the truth adds a disturbing weight. If crucial details were hidden, what else remains concealed beneath layers of water and silence? The Titanic today is not merely a wreck, it is an eternal warning. The lesson is clear: arrogance, greed, and negligence can cost lives and rewrite the narrative of history. And as we look at the remains on the ocean floor, we are reminded that truth is often darker than myth. Ballard left us visual evidence, reports, analyses, but the decision to face or ignore that truth remains ours.